This is our introduction to the world, and they want to know who we are.
Well, I made my first million when I was 31 and my first billion when I was 41. We had 5 guys become a billionaire in a day. We were like, how in the hell did that just happen? So Mel's superpower is his smile.
You should aim so fucking high that it makes up for the 10 failures.
After wrestling, everything else is easy.
If there's anyone you ever want to sit next to at a dinner party, he locks in, his eyes get you, and he is completely engaged with the person next to him.
I never feel like y'all are older than me. I never feel like...
That's because we act like we're 30.
Like there's no barriers with our friendship, relationship. It's like a brotherhood. What does business untitled mean to you, Mike?
You picked the name and you asked me what it means. Listen, business untitled means to run a business, you don't really have a title. You do all kinds of different things. And in today's world, you're required to be a salesman, you're required to be a cheerleader, required to be a manager, required to have some entrepreneurial sense of smell to understand where the opportunity is. And so, different people, different leaders have different skill sets. And so hopefully we're going to bring on, leaders in all kinds of different industries, and from culture to finance to the social justice world, and figure out their skills and their journey, and maybe I'll learn something.
Shit, that was a good freestyle.
It's all about freestyle.
What it means to you?
Yeah, I think it means also, we're in a shifting world. It's a dynamic world. So it's not 50 years ago. Like, this is investment business. This is agricultural business. All these areas are crossing over. A lot of the businesses that I'm involved in, affect each other, or start to partner with each other, or collaborate with each other. So I think the world has become less linear, more fluid, and less and harder to label in a sense. So untitled to me is like that. It's just free roaming around the concept of business.
And for me, it kind of means exactly who I am today. Like, if it was when I was growing up, I thought I had to go to Harvard or Princeton or something to end up owning the businesses I do, or to be an executive, or any of the things I did. So I just think, it just kind of, to piggyback what you say off of, it's no set ways anymore to become a CEO, to become an owner, or to do any kind of business you want to do. You could do it untraditional and untitled.
Deep, Mel. That was profound.
So I'm Mel Carter. I mean, a lot of people watching this probably know exactly who I am.
That's because there'll be about 11 people watching the first episode. It'll be Flatbush.
I put on for Flatbush. But no, I'm a music executive. I started with managing artists. Actually, I started my career by going to the labels, handing out CDs, trying to get somebody to give me an opportunity. Finally got an opportunity, started managing. My first act was Giovanni. Some of you guys will remember him. You probably don't. He was this 10-year-old kid. Then I found this group, City Morgue, which turned into Goal. Became an executive at Republic. Did that for 5 years. Left Republic. I was a senior vice president at Republic Records.
Senior VP.
And left that, went to Warner, started my own label at Warner. Also became a consultant there. Invested in Sweet Chick. Own 18 Bojangles restaurants, developing 14 more. Became the largest Black franchisor at Bojangles. And, because of Mike and Dave, I've had a lot of opportunities to invest in a lot of different things across the board. Bitcoin to the moon being one of them, right? And, I come from a very, the things I'm doing is mind-blowing to me, because I dropped out of high school in 10th grade. So that's my highest education level, other than the things I teach myself and learn from Mike, Dave, and other people I'm blessed to be around.
Mike Novogratz, a much more traditional route than Mel. I was a middle-class kid, went to a great public high school. I went to Princeton. I was in the Army. I spent most of my career in finance first Goldman Sachs, then a company called Fortress. Some people would call us boring Wall Streeters, but I tried to be less boring than most Wall Streeters. And then the latest chapter has been cryptocurrencies, where I run a big company that does all thing crypto, and have been a promoter of, the space. And but I also have had a diverse group of, philanthropic interests and investment interests and friends, and pretty much live my life by meeting new people and, playing with their energy, enjoying their energy, and learning from them.
So I'm Dave Barry. I'm probably in between you two guys in terms of, went to public high school in New Jersey, went to Columbia, went to law school, really was just into learning as much as I could to eventually get into business, and never went the institutional route, but started developing apartments with my brother, and from there got into hotels, and really got a kind of fine understanding of capital markets and leverage and acquisitions, and real estate development just has so many pieces to it. You're you're a salesman, financier, all these things. And then using that as a base, just started getting involved in other collaborations, right? With things in tech, things in crypto, things in food and beverage, whether it was Catch or W Hotels, some of the tech investments. But it's just really been a story of using a business framework of how do you make money, how do you run an organization, and just applying it to all these different contexts. And I really love the aspect of thinking through what makes this business special, what makes this business work, what makes this business defensible in a sense. And my favorite part is really investing with friends, collaborating with friends, with Mel on Bojangles, with Mike. We've done a bunch of deals together with other friends, but it's been a journey, and it keeps going for me all the time. I'm always interested in new ideas, new deals, what's going on next, and applying what I've learned to those new things, and mentoring people as well as they're coming up with their new ideas.
So, Mike, I was born poor as fuck. Everybody know that. I'm not as poor, but
You're not poor anymore. You got better watches than I have.
I got better watches than you have, because you don't like watches and you lose watches. The 2 watches
That's
you
true.
did have. Going to Princeton, what was that like?
It was awesome.
How did you get into Princeton if you was just middle class?
I was a nerd in high school. I worked my butt off, and I was a good wrestler. And, if you're a good athlete, it makes it easier to get into the best schools, because they give about 20% of the spots at Princeton and Harvard, Columbia to guys that could be on the wrestling or the football or the track team, whatever team. And so that was the entry point. It was a bit intimidating, right? Because in high school, I was the big fish in the small pond. And back then, it was pre-internet and pre-Facebook and pre-everything else. And so you kind of grew up in a snow globe. The borders of that snow globe was all you knew. And so you knew your neighborhood, you knew the couple neighborhoods around you, but you didn't know the world. You didn't see Kim Kardashian wearing the latest fashions. And so you thought you were kind of the shit. And then you go to a school and you're like, oh, shit, everybody here is smarter than me. And the athletes are all better athletes than me. And so your sense of being at the top of the food chain, right, the apex predator, shrinks pretty quick. And, but the unique thing is, after a couple years, you realize, oh, those rich guys, they shit on the same toilets we do. And they're just as insecure. They're not much smarter. And, it's a wonderful place to go, especially if you didn't start at the top, because you realize I can do anything those guys can do. And so I didn't take the hardest classes at Princeton. I kind of tried to figure out how to get through, because I was a little insecure. And it's funny, because I've got kids who grew up rich kids, and Dave's got kids that have grown up rich kids, and we've kind of co-raised our families together. And they go to those schools and take such higher level classes, because they come from this academic confidence, having been around our dinner tables, having gone to the best prep schools in New York, and so they show up. But it's less of a growth experience for them in that respect, because they were already there. And so when you come from where you came from or where I came from, no matter what level, it's jumping that next level, realizing there's nothing that much more special about those people. It was just the opportunity set they had. And I think that's a unique lesson to learn. And the faster you learn it in life, the better you do.
And Dave, what about you? Were you born rich or no?
I was born.
I like to say Dave was born rich.
I think Dave was born rich too.
I was
he
born
don't like to
upper
say it
middle.
though.
Well, my father was a lawyer, got into affordable housing development when I was in junior high kind of thing, you know.
How many buildings you guys had when you was by high school?
I don't know the answer. Probably there was.
Rich.
He probably had 5 or 10. Yeah, but they were
5 or 10 buildings. You was born rich.
But for real, give you a point of reference. Like I never left the country until I was 17. Okay, like I never went to Europe. I never, it was a more, we'd go to Arizona, we'd go to the beach. It was what I would say like it was like a normal American kind of like upbringing, right? And
rich
for me, not rich like our kids. And I just wanted to get into the best school I could get into. Again, like Mike. Wrestling was really like my kind of key out of there in terms of like, okay, I'm going to use this to get into somewhere really.
And what made you get into wrestling?
Jersey has really strong wrestling, and I grew up in Jersey, and like every town, little kids wrestle, and so I was just good at it.
And you might notice he's not 6'4".
Yeah, well, there's that too, but Jersey just has an incredible density of wrestling, and so like many little kids are like given the shot to wrestle when they're in Jersey, and I was good at it, just kept with it, and I liked it, man. It was something I was good at, so then I like kind of leaned into it. I think it, really, and Mike would probably agree with this. It gives you as a kid this ability to take risk in a way that you can't ordinarily take it as a little kid, right? Because you're putting yourself out there one-on-one every time, and you're learning what it feels like to fail, to succeed, even after you've done hard work. So I think for me, that's a huge part of like what's kind of formed me in terms of like being able to take risk and not worry about it. Because I think, famous wrestler Dan Gable, who was the kind of Olympian and famous coach of Iowa, said, after wrestling, everything else is easy, and I think we both kind of subscribe to that. And getting into Columbia to parrot what Mike said, it really gave me this confidence that, oh, wow, man, I'm as smart as these guys. There's nothing special here. And then just using that as a base to just grow off of and, take more risk, do more things, get involved with more things.
What the fuck am I, the host?
You are the host. You are the host.
Right
My first business was, I don't know where it came from. I was like 10 years old. My mom sent me a Super Nintendo. I spoke about this. Yeah. My mom sent me a Super Nintendo, and I was in Trinidad, and I was the only kid in like a maybe 50 block radius that had a Super Nintendo. So all my friends would come over every fucking day. It was annoying, but it was fun. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to put this outside, and I'm going to charge everybody $1 to play. And that was my first business. I put my TV outside, and I started charging kids $20 to play. And I was like 10 years old, and I was making like $20, $30 a day for like years, and I was the richest kid in the neighborhood. I mean, I think like, it's a lot of kids who want to do stuff, a lot of kids who did shit. And I think honestly, like selling cigarettes was probably one of the moments for me where I was like, man, I could do something other than like sell drugs, other than, well, I don't even think scamming was a thing at the time, but I just saw a different opportunity, started meeting new people. And I always say like, people is my power. Like, cause I learned from people. Like even the last 5 years with you guys, like my personality has changed. Like the things I like has changed. And that's why that saying is really true. You hang around like, I mean, I'm praying to God it's true. You hang around 5 billionaires, you'll become one, right? Or you hang around 5 gang members, you're probably gonna become a gang member. So for me, like, I don't know, I had that in me since I was 10 years old or whatever it is. And I don't think I've made it to where I want to go yet, but I do have those moments where I'm like, damn, I think I made it. And then I have those moments where I didn't make it, right? Like, I got so far to go. And it's because I'm around guys like you, like that just push, motivate me. Like, you guys are rich, and I watch you guys work just as hard or harder than me every single day. So there's no world where I stop working and no world where I get comfortable. Yeah. And I think that's one of my things. Like, I've just never been comfortable, which also gives me a shit ton of anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's a balance, right?
This is the day, like, like every other day, I'm like, fuck, today's the day I go back to Flatbush.
Yeah.
And I love Flatbush. I just don't want to live there.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's a balance. Even talking about being rich, you put it in the context of like cars or watches and that, but like part of it is also like, and I see like you give toys back every year in the Trinidad,
I do a toy drive in Trinidad every year.
You help your family out. You help a lot of people out. You know, you're always there. So like part of like being rich, right, or whatever, isn't about buying more watches, right?
Yeah.
That's like an important, I think, distinction as well. It's like you can shape the world in a way that's positive by investing in other people, whether it's because they need it, right, because they're on hard times, or there's something you see special in them, right? We talk about this, like the way I like to look at philanthropy, you know, in some ways is like personal, like individual, like who's going to really, you know, who's a great person that really needs a break, you know, and that can like scale through their actions into something that's really going to be beneficial for the world, you know, in a sense. And like, even in terms of like Bojangles, right? Like when we were doing that, it's really like that for me was like, I'm going to invest with you in this because like I believe in you and I believe it, you know what I mean? Like your ability to, so I think there's something about like being rich that needs to be clarified about that as well, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And that is one of my joys, you know what I'm saying? Like, my daughter was born in the projects. She don't even remember it. Like, I mean, maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, but she act like she doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that, being able to help a ton of people from my neighborhood, help people from Trinidad. So I think that's part of the financial freedom, is being able to help people. I'm one of those guys that are like, sacrifice everything, and I'm like, fuck it, if it fails, it fails, right? But I tried 3 things and usually it work out, and I think that's because I do a lot of good, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I've never seen Mike so quiet. What's up?
I'm just listening to Mel. Well, you talk about, you know, this idea of rich. Let's put some context. There are 149 million Americans. That's broadly half the country, a little less than half the country, that don't have $1,000. Means that they have a medical bill, a bail, a doctor's bill. They're screwed. And so there's so many people that you can help. And you think, you know, we're just talking about rich versus this rich. It's, again, anybody that's, you know, has the capacity to do what they want to do is wealthy. They just are. I mean, if you literally look at the numbers, you know, we have a really a country that's struggling in lots of ways. And it doesn't feel it if you live in Manhattan, and it doesn't feel it if you travel in the circles that we're traveling in, but you go outside. And so there's like an unlimited amount of people you can help. It's just crazy, though, when you think of those numbers.
Yeah.
147 million Americans, not you know, people that are living in, you know, Nicaragua.
Right.
And like half of America don't have, what, $400 in their checking account?
Yeah.
Which is fucking crazy.
And a lot of those people, though, right, what do they want? They want an opportunity to get on the ladder, right? So how do you get them on the ladder? Well, there's handouts, but there's also like investing in people that are in those communities, in for-profit engagements 100%. As well, that are going to hire 10 of those people, 20 of those people, 100 of those people, right? And like be on the ground, you know, because I think it's really like, you know, the country's built on this concept of like liberty, freedom, right? That's what makes America, you know, in many ways so strong.
But one of the big shames says, well, me and you grew up, we were a country that was top in social mobility, meaning if you were born middle class, it was within reach to get to upper middle, upper class, and all the way up. And if you just look at our social mobility numbers in the last 40 years, broadly since we went to high school, we've come way, way down. You're more optimistic if you were born in Vietnam on the way up. Are my kids going to have a better life than I had? Vietnam now, 97% of their country thinks so. America, 35% thinks so. It's the lowest level we've ever been at.
Yeah, I think there's
Thinking
still,
or factual?
If you poll Americans, only 35% of Americans think their kids will have a better life than they did.
Right. So that's like So I'd say that's like a little different than. There's 2 points in there, right? One is like that's hope, that's psychology, and that's like bleeding out, which is not a good thing. But on the other side, there is still there is still mobility, right? There's still every year.
Right here we got mobility.
Right here, tech world, Wall Street world, right? There's tons of examples of people that really started at the bottom and still continue, and that's something that is great about this country. That's much harder to do in Europe, for instance, right?
But that
many
was
other places.
that was the American dream is called. I want my kids to have a better life than I have, and that's what this USA was founded on. We got to get back to it.
I think the American dream is a little bit different than that. It's like if I try my best, I have a fair shot at achieving that, right? It's not guaranteed, never has been guaranteed.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And statistically, we had a lot more people achieve the American dream 40 years ago than we are having it today. Right. And that's where I think America needs to get its act together and figure out what that right balance of politics is and, teach a man to fish versus give him a fish, that whole spectrum of how do we structure the society so people can live the American dream.
I got an idea actually, just hit me.
What?
Mike should run for president.
I know what I would do.
What would you do?
If I was president for a day, I would pass a law that there could be no public service unions.
I'm on top of that.
I don't mean
one.
private unions.
Yeah.
I mean like these public sector teachers unions and police unions, and prison unions, and nobody wants to look behind that and understand like why our kids are getting crummy educations. Well, teachers didn't send people back to school for a year and a half after COVID, and everybody else in the world is working, and they're fighting for something else. And so I think, again, I want to be clear, it's public sector unions because you already have your representatives in Congress or the mayor,
City Hall, right?
Or City Hall, and I just think it's a racket, and so that'd be my law.
I like that, and listen, I'm a pretty progressive guy, at least a center-left Democrat, and for the Democratic Party, that's like you need the unions, but quite frankly, it's the public sector unions that have in criminal justice reform. You scratch your head. It's the police union, the prison union, the probation union that stand in the way of lots of reform, and so I'm with Dave on that. I think mine would be interesting. I would have all regulations, all laws have a 10-year life cycle. And so after 10 years, you've got to re-up it. You've got to decide.
What about the good ones?
I like that.
Well, if it's a good one, you say, hey, it's still a good law. Let's hit it. But there's so many things that calcify in our system that you can't get rid of. I mean, there's goddamn scaffolding all over New York City. Somebody passed a scaffolding law a while ago, and now we've got scaffolding and you can't change the rule because it's really hard to change rules. And so we have all of these. Some things are really smart and help in safety, but so many regulations that just get out there and they never change. And so I've been in the change business for a while, and it's shocking how hard it is to change. I have not met one politician, one thoughtful person when we talk about probation and parole, when we say, hey, we should turn probation and parole officers into life coaches and incentivize that officer, right, that coach, to make sure that person coming out of jail or prison does well. Everyone says that's a great idea. And the chance of that actually being implemented is so small because the system doesn't work that way. And everyone wants to block it because there's vested interest, because the probation officers have their union and they're a pretty tough union. And also it's just, politicians have other priorities. Do they really care about people on probation and parole? Not that much. And so if they have to re-vote on it, they can kind of go with the common sense.
Yeah, it's almost like making like big companies, right? They get all these regulations and rules. You could put it into that context too. And then they become like calcified in a way. So this is like almost like keeping the spirit more fluid and dynamic by forcing people to I like that law too, actually, by forcing people to think about what those laws are. Do we still need them or do we shape them different? What about you?
All right.
Damn, I think I'd have two. Can I have two?
Give them, yeah.
One would be there would be a lot more serious punishment for police brutality. Just growing up. Growing up, for real, I experienced police brutality so fucking much that I didn't even know it was police brutality, strangely enough, till I met you. And, like, it was just normal. I mean, Will, I'm sure you know that. Like, a cop pull you over, push you on the car, throw you on the floor, and that was just a fucking Monday. And it was like, I didn't get my eye black, I didn't get shot, I didn't get dragged, so it's not police brutality, right? But in all reality, every kid from my hood, not every, but 80% of the kids from my hood has had an experience where a cop pulled up on them, especially, well, they started back doing it again. I think they stopped. Remember when the cops could have jumped down, frisk you?
Stop.
Yeah.
Did that start back?
No.
Okay, well, that
I don't
stopped.
think so. I shouldn't.
I think it did. I don't know. But any which way, stop and frisk was, for a long time, legal way of police brutality, because it wasn't just stopping, it was stop, pushed on a car, pushed on a floor, and that shit has happened to me probably 100 times, and that's police brutality, right? But
it's trauma.
I just never knew it was. And the next thing I would probably do, but it would have to be like a world law, whatever, let's stick to America. I would take all guns away.
Mel is passing world gun control.
No, I would, because it's like, you know, I have, and we always talk about this. I've lost like maybe 200 friends, no exaggeration, to gun violence. I was shot.
It's crazy.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
You were shot in the face.
I was shot in the face, like just growing up on a random Wednesday, standing by a party. And I would, damn, I need to be president for a couple fucking days. This fentanyl shit is completely out of control, and I feel like we need to like fight that harder or do something to like about that.
Well, you know, that's an interesting thought. So about, I don't know, 8 years ago, I had a cousin that became an opioid addict, and because of it, I started understanding and researching what the hell was going on. He bizarrely had been a gardener at the Sackler House, and the Sacklers had really created the opioid epidemic, right? Purdue Pharma was their company, and they created OxyContin, and they advertised it, and they convinced America that they convinced all the doctors that pain management was a wildly important part of health, and that you would heal faster. And there's a lot of science behind it. You heal faster if you're out of pain. And so when we were a kid, you went to the dentist's office and they pulled a tooth, and you'd go home and you'd put an ice bag on your head or a piece of ice in your mouth or take an aspirin. And my kids, they get a Vicodin or a Percocet, and so we had this shift. Anyways, I said, I'm going to screw this family. I'm going to go after them. And so I started writing a script called America's Escobars. I started talking to politicians, and in the long run, I didn't do anything. But it all happened anyway. And, the family first paid a lawsuit in 2006, $600 million, single biggest lawsuit at that point, fine they paid. The family was discredited. Everyone said, oh, there's this opioid epidemic. And now everyone knows there's an opioid epidemic. Even so, each year, more people are dying. Each year. Like this year, there'll be 2 million emergency room visits for fentanyl. 2 million.
That's fucking
110,000 people have died this year for opioids. Lots of, fentanyl, oxy, heroin, black tar, all put together. And the lines are going up, not down. Why we only have 100,000 people dying is because you have Narcan now, and you have Narcan at parties and whatnot.
Yeah, that's another thing. I think they should literally be just giving that shit out on the corner.
You can't buy drug testing strips at the Walgreens.
Why?
Because people think there's one school of thought that if you buy the drug testing strips, if you sell them, you're promoting drug use as opposed to saving lives. And so there's a fierce battle. But right now it's illegal in most states to buy drug testing kits.
It's crazy.
That makes no sense either.
I met Mike for the first time at Mike Rubin's rooftop. I had no fucking idea who Mike was. He was there talking, whatever. I had on a watch, and he
stole his watch.
Stole my watch. He asked to see the watch and put it on, at the time, the watch was like $140,000, and it was plastic, and he was like, "This watch is $140,000. Why would you do that? Like, this doesn't make any sense." And he took this guy that
Meek's chain.
Yeah, Meek's chain, and we went somewhere else, and he just like left with my watch
And Meek's chain.
and Meek's chain. And I remember somebody was like, I was like, "Yo, where did that guy go with my fucking watch?" At the time, that's literally the most expensive thing I have to my name, and I'm like, which is crazy because that shouldn't have been the most expensive thing I had, and I was like, "Where did the guy go?" And it was like, "Oh, don't worry about him. He's fine. He's a billionaire. If he loses it, you're fine." And I'm like, that doesn't really help me right now. Like, and then the security came back and was like, "Yeah, he just kind of wandered down the street like 3 a.m. with this huge chain and this fucking watch." And I didn't hear from him for like 3 days. And I'm like, how do I find the guy? And then he called me, and I went to his house, and I walked into his house. I remember I walked to this building, and I was like, this is where a billionaire lives? This is like a very weird building for a billionaire to live. And I walked in, and yeah, it was a billionaire's fucking apartment.
But what he doesn't tell you is I'm not used to smoking weed, and these guys were smoking the Chronic or something.
Not me. I don't smoke.
And so then I was just like, I got to get out of here. And so I decided I'd Irish exit. Woke up, literally, I couldn't get the damn chain off because those clasps on chains are, I don't know, you have to be like a locksmith. And so I woke up like sleeping next to my wife in my bed with a freaking chain choking me because it was a heavy chain and a big watch on. And my wife's like, I'm not even going to ask.
And he was fun, and he was funny, and he was cool. And literally since that day, we started hanging out. And maybe a couple months later, I went to Jackson where you guys have that hotel there. Are we shamelessly plugging like Caldera House?
No, we don't need to plug Caldera. But it's the best hotel in Jackson.
It's the best hotel in Jackson if you want to go skiing or even a hot summer day. And I remember Dave specifically because we walked in there and it was a new environment. Now I know everyone that was there. At the time I knew no one. And Dave was the only guy with Yeezys on. And automatically I was like, all right, me and that guy, we're going to be friends. Because he had Yeezys on. And I was like, and he kept Yeezys on the entire time, cool jeans, the same shirt that he wears every single day. He literally has like 70 of these shirts hung up. I guess that's your Superman outfit, but he had on Yeezys. And like, we connected a little bit that day. We connected over the trip a little bit, and then we came back, connected, and the three of us just been kind of like rocking ever since. Like, it's like we always say I'm much younger than them, but I never feel like y'all are older than me. I never feel like...
That's because we act like we're 30.
It's no age gap. It's no like, I'm black, he's white, you're Jewish. Like, there's no barriers with our, like, friendship, relationship. It's like a brotherhood, you know what I'm saying? So I learn from you guys every fucking day. I call and ask questions, and I hope you guys learn something from me. And yeah, that's my take on how we met.
We met first in college. Dave wrestled at Columbia, I wrestled at Princeton, and one of my teammates was a good friend of his in high school, rivals, friends, and so we hung out a bit in college, and then we kind of reconnected right when we were having kids. We had small kids, and pretty much love at first sight at that point, and I've got 4, he's got 3. We raised our families collectively in lots of ways. We've probably been on, I don't know, 100 trips with our kids, and
Strangely, I've been on like 30 of them.
And so have been, partners in crime and philanthropy and wrestling and life.
I was the moment that, well, I was going to say you made your first million, but you was born rich, even though you don't want to admit it. But on your own was the moment you made your first million, and you was like, shit, what the hell? Or like first 10 minutes, whatever it was. You know what I'm saying? That you was like on your own and you was like, this is crazy.
I was a lawyer briefly. I think I told you that. Didn't like it, and got into real estate development, and that was like at a pretty lucky time because it was like early mid 90s, and you're too young to remember, but that was just right after like the banking crisis of the 88, 89, 90, like into that, and so real estate was super cheap, and I bought out of like bankruptcy essentially this thing called Port Liberté, which was done by somebody else and had at that time lost the most money for an SNL like east of the Mississippi. Like they had spent like $200 million.
What's the SNL?
Savings and loan.
Okay.
Right? So like kind of like we're in this like banking crisis or whatever now with the failure of like, Silicon Valley or First Republic.
Signature.
Back in the like 90, 91, tons of these local banks were failing. It was called the SNL, the Savings and Loan Crisis.
Yeah.
And so after that, real estate was really cheap. Bought this thing that had like, they had spent like $200 million on for $9 million. And it had like a bunch of like half-empty apartments. It was a mess. But it was something that with like some hard work and just where the markets were coming back, ended up just making like gobs of money. And it felt scary at first because it was really beaten up and the market was like just totally stressed. But as it came out, the inventory we bought was almost like worth as much as like the physical inventory of like empty condos we bought was like worth as much as the debt at that point in time. And then it left us with like this other like 60 acres of land that we ended up just building more condominiums on. Ended up building Liberty National Golf Course out of that, right? Which was like all the area around it. But I think that was the first time where it was like such a big difference between like a few $1 million and like the, cash flow that, was coming over the years from those condos, like, really like tens of millions of dollars, at that point in time. And
that was over like what?
Essentially it was like those 4 years just was like more money than I'd ever like kind of seen or
Did you have a
dreamed
moment
of.
where you was like, what the fuck? I think I'm really rich and I made it.
I don't know if I had that, but I think I had this moment of like, wow, there's like a huge opportunity in front of me to make like my expectations and, kind of dreams got a lot bigger at that point in time. It just like opened up this like concept of like, like you can go after bigger projects. Nothing's too big. You can really like apply yourself. Because I think there's before you take that risk, I don't know, at least for me, it's like you put ceilings on yourself, right? It's that thing where it's like, and Mike, I said, has been really good at like lifting those ceilings. He puts really big ceilings on himself. But in real estate, it's capital intensive. You don't want to make wrong moves. A lot of it's about preservation. And so you put these ceilings on. And I think like that particular project allowed me to really raise that ceiling up and say, wow, I can really do anything in real estate at this point in time. And like gave me the confidence to go into hotels and nightlife and a bunch of other things,
How many buildings and hotels do you have now?
A lot.
I mean, yeah, I probably...
People want to know.
You want to know.
I know.
I'm not sure people want to know.
Yeah,
I know.
I've probably done 50 projects, most of which we hold, but it's, I'm never like somebody that like, obviously you know me, like brags or talks a lot about that stuff, because sometimes with real estate you have other partners, so but a lot, we've probably developed 15,000 apartments and 10 or 12 hotels, something like that, right?
He has like
Chelsea.
40,000 apartments. Just for the record.
Your records.
And to be totally honest, I don't even keep, it's not that I don't keep track of them. I don't score like that. You know what I mean? I I love to do these projects because I find them really interesting, how to build this, how to create this. And so I don't like spend a lot of time like thinking about how many apartments do I have. And I know that sounds crazy, but
think about it this way. Like, think about did you ever play sports when you were in
No, flag
I
football.
forgot.
once.
He was not a great athlete, Mel.
At all.
But if you were a normal kid, you might have had the great season. And, at that point in that season, you knew your track record. You knew your how many home runs you hit. And 20 years later, it just doesn't really matter. And so, like, life's lived in chapters. And, counting up the collection of your chapters is kind of a bizarre way to think of things, right? In that moment, in whatever that chapter you're doing, if it's Dave's now doing Irby or, I'm doing this crypto business, it's really important to you and you have your own metrics on how you feel about doing well. But I don't look back and kind of dwell on my Goldman Sachs chapter or my Fortress chapter or my high school chapter.
No. Definitely.
So that
and I
idea,
feel the same
that
way.
idea of adding up and collecting and having a ledger isn't really the way at least the way I've participated in life.
No, I feel the same way, but we have like 300 episodes, hopefully, if this is successful. And this is our introduction to the world, and they want to know who we are and what we do and why the fuck they should listen to us. So, question to you. When did you make your first million, first 10 million? What did it feel like? When did you make your first $1 billion?
Well, I made my first million when I was 31 and my first billion when I was 41.
Like how he is now, that was not where his financial picture was in 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
And I remember like that's for all you guys? Or then he's like, no, that's just like my share. And I was like, whoa, that blew my mind too, to be honest with you. I couldn't even
the
believe
Fortress
it.
IPO was like for a second, to this day, I think this is true. We had 5 guys become a billionaire in a day. And that included things like Google.
That's the company you started.
Microsoft. I was a partner, one of the 5 founders. It actually started by a guy named Wes Edens, but me, Pete Brigger, joined right afterwards. And so really the 3 of us built different businesses and put them together. And it was a fun ride. And that was really, we were like, looking around, we're like, how in the hell did that just happen?
You know, it was one of mine. It was, I have a few of them, but it was when I first did my biggest deal with Republic. And I had $1 million in my bank account. And I remember going to the ATM. This is like 7 years ago at this point. I remember going to the ATM. I remember going to sleep, and it was supposed to be there the next day. And I woke up like fucking 6 in the morning. I didn't even call the bank. I went to the ATM and I checked, and it wasn't there. And then like I went back like 10 o'clock, checked, it wasn't there. And I was like, fuck, man, I knew I wasn't getting this money. and then I went back maybe like 3 o'clock, and it said, I probably had like I don't know, $200,000 in there before. And it said $1.2 million. And I was like, oh shit, I have $1 million. And I just kept doing it over and over and taping it. just kept making a video of it. To this day, I probably got 10 videos of it. And then like another moment for real was like a surreal moment I had was when I have these moments all the time, thank God. But one of the moments I had was when we was coming back from Uruguay when we went for my birthday / the what's the company name? Another shameless
Francis
plug.
Melman.
Not Francis Melman, but the company you invested in.
Prior
Travel.
Yeah.
So
Prior Travel.
Shout out Prior Travel.
Shout out Prior Travel. But listen, we was flying back on your plane, and then we passed over my country, which is Trinidad.
Yep.
And I left Trinidad when I was 12 years old. Grew up super poor, lived in not even a 1-bedroom house, like a fucking shack. And like to be, I don't know, to be flying over my country, we was flying so low that I could kind of like not see the houses, but just see the lights of the country. I don't know if you guys remember this. James was like, oh, that's Trinidad right there. And like, I remember getting chills and like emotional because I was like, what the fuck? I'm flying over my country that I left poor as fuck, not knowing like not knowing anything. And then 20 years later, I'm flying over my country in one of my best friends' private jet. And with my family, my closest friends, like it wasn't like it was that moment for me was like, yo, my life is kind of different and crazy.
I also liked when I opened the W Hotel. You were
That
there,
was fun.
right? In the open party, and that was interesting because it went from what the thing about developing apartments is nobody ever knows them because it's just like they're just apartments. They're just apartments all over the place. But with that, it was really fun. We like had opening parties. Like Jamie Foxx played it. Like we had another one. Snoop was at the second one. P. Diddy was at the third. But that was also a moment where I was like, wow, like. This is real, just because sometimes that like external validation.
Yeah, the W was your stepping out moment.
Yeah, that was like a stepping out moment where it was like kind of like transcended just like apartments.
Wait, wasn't the standard before the W?
No, W first.
Okay.
Yeah, W first.
Oh, so W is like
yeah.
But you had those three parties. I mean, the Snoop party, the second anniversary.
Yeah,
I jumped off the stage at one point.
Yeah, we would all get up on the stage with him. The kids, they were all like little kids, like jumping around. They were fun times. But it was like a stepping out moment and a kind of like I don't have a lot of like pinch me moments because like all of us like we're in the grind, we're in the hustle, right? Like most of the time you're not doing that, but that was one where I was like, all right, like I could be proud of this.
So like one of my favorite things to do, and like I always wish I could have the courage to do it like a Wallow does it, or like a Wallow. Shout out to Wallow. That's a good friend of ours. But I like to give advice to I'm not a kid anymore, but kids who I see like kind of like me with a entrepreneurial spirit that comes from like an inner city. Or at this point, anybody who just kind of like wants it as bad as I want it. Like I love to sit and talk with them. I love to give them my take on, like you just said, like I always tell people like whatever success I have is literally like me succeeding probably 7 times and failing 90 times. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure with you guys is the same. And it looks from the outside like, damn, everything this guy does is successful, but it's like you're not going on fucking Instagram on Facebook and be like, yo, today I just failed fucking crazy and I lost $1 million or this was just terrible. Like, so, but you may go on Instagram and be like, yo, I started the W today, So like, I think like for me, I always want people and kids to know that we fail a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like me personally, definitely. I have failed a lot. It's just, I feel like I aim so high that it makes up. And I think that's what everybody should do. You should aim so fucking high that it makes up for the 10 failures. Yeah. So if you succeed one time, it's kind of like you didn't fail that 10 times. It was just lessons and so on and so forth. So I like to kind of like, really give people advice, let them understand that it's okay to fail. Like, the shit just looks good. But, I saw somebody say that a couple nights ago on Instagram, and I think I posted, and it was like, if people really understand what being an entrepreneur is, most people will run away from it because it's like stressful nights, high blood pressure, no fucking sleep, failing so many times, depression at times, but then you have those huge booms after trying 20 times, something may work out, and then it feels like it was all worth it and you almost forget about all the bad shit. But even on a daily basis, like, you're stressed, I'm stressed, you're stressed, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's worth it.
Yeah, when I mentor people, I talk about resilience a lot, about this concept of just like, getting, like, doing as much as you can, taking on as much as you can even if you're at a company, for the company, not just for the company, but for you. The more risk you can take, the more exposure you can get, the more times you can fail on somebody else's nickel, frankly, sometimes, the more equipped you're going to be to succeed next time.
Listen, I think the secret sauce to life, and I think the secret sauce to this show is going to be, crossing communities, different cultures, different age, different people. And that's where you learn. That's where uncomfortability turns into comfortability. And so, hey, looking forward to it. Cheers.